Hey everybody, Dragon Movie Guy here. Welcome to my May movie release, the kickoff of the summer movie season. This is my favorite time of year for watching movies, blockbusters, and actually a lot of indie movies too that are scheduled to come out in May 2023. Joining me to talk about May movie releases is a friend of the channel. He's had me on as a guest many times. I'm trying to return the favor here. But really, he's coming on. We're talking movies because we both love movies a ton. You know him as the host of Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies. He has the great baritone voice that does voiceover work that you can find on Fiverr. Please welcome to Dragon Movie Guy, Rob Kristjansson.
Hey man, how you doing?
Thank you for coming on. Your summer movie season's about to kick off.
I'm excited about a few of the flicks we're going to talk about today. And I'm just excited about it being, we're kicking into summer. We really are past the bad years. I'm just looking forward to being outside and then going right back inside into air-conditioned comfort and some theater. We've got a few new theaters here in Winnipeg. Lie-down recliner seats are just becoming standard. I'm jazzed. I'm jazzed, baby.
Yeah, I love the recliner
I'm
seats.
jazzed.
Yes. Most of the theaters down here in Vegas have them. And then you go to like an older theater that hasn't been remodeled in the last couple of years, and it's like just the seat's fine. It's fine. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with it. But it's like, well, why can't I lay back and they don't have a reclining seat? Not coming back to this theater anytime soon. We'll start with you. We'll go two at a time. We'll go eat every other, and also we will invite people in the chat to come on and participate in the discussion. If you guys would like to see
Fancy.
Yes, it is interactive, as they say. So anyone who would like to chime in on the conversation, please be sure to leave a comment in the live chat section of this video. It is an honorable mention because it's a television show, not a movie.
Well, here you said two, so I'm going to start with my honorable mention is Fubar. I can't say I'm super excited, but I'm kind of interested. I think Arnie has demonstrable comic chops, and to see him playing with his old image in a TV series, I'm kind of excited. I'm hoping it won't be your typical Netflix thing where big long arc that they never pay off. I'd like just some straight up episodic adventures and goofiness and maybe a larger arc, but that each episode just feels fun and good in and of itself. So I'll at least try it out.
And they just released the first trailer.
I was interested on the teaser. The teaser alone was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and it kind of sort of looked like, if you took the premise from True Lies and fast forwarded 30 years. It's kind of sort of what it feels like watching the full trailer.
That's exactly what I was thinking of. I think True Lies is a film that doesn't get the credit it deserved, even when I first saw it 20, 30 years ago. So yeah, we'll see how it plays out. Could be an absolute disaster, but that's the chance you take. And especially with Netflix, if I've already paid for it, I mean, I might as well give it a shot.
And interesting, too, that Monica Barbaro from Top Gun Maverick is the one playing his adult daughter in the trailer. She's the one that's kind of taking over the family business, and he doesn't know it. And also interesting is Adam Pally, who I didn't think that I'd seen him in something, but I was like, that name sounds familiar. Adam Pally was the news photographer in Iron Man 3. When Tony Stark, Iron Man, sneaks into the news photographer when he's over in Tennessee or Kentucky or whatever, and the guy has the goatee that's like, I love Tony Stark, and Tony Stark sitting there in his live truck. That's the guy. That's Adam Pally from 15 or
Really?
10 years ago. Yeah. It's a small part. It's an insignificant part of the MCU, but as the former TV news photographer, to see the news photographer with the goatee, which I've had a goatee many times over the years myself, to see him back in he's not quite the Tom Arnold character from True Lies, but he is one of the guy in a chair, or the one of the extra agents out in the field. So kind of cool to see Adam Pally and Monica Barbaro in this series. And also was interesting to see the Arnie, you're right, his sense of humor coming back, because it seems like since he left office from being the governor, most of his movies he hasn't had that kind of epic level energy. And in this trailer, you really do see the Arnold of the 90s and early 2000s. You see that energy, you see that feeling from the type of his career that, quite frankly, we haven't seen in a lot of his movies the last 5, 6, 7 years.
Another movie I enjoyed that I don't think got the credit was that Last Stand. Johnny Knoxville, Jamie Alexander. Sorry, I don't know where I got Corey Bush out of.
From the Thor movies.
Knoxville, Forrest Whitaker, Louise Guzman. I enjoyed that flick, and I thought, again, it had some of that humor that going into, like you said, the peak of his career, where his twins, Kindergarten Cop, the aforementioned Last Action Hero, or even, what was the one with Jamie Lee Curtis?
True Lies.
True Lies, thank you. Can I say I'm super excited? I don't know.
It is the mother. The mother of all Netflix movies.
Ms. Lopez.
Yes.
And as far as this goes, I mean, hey, she's wearing a parka. I'm Canadian, just getting out of winter. That's what I want to do. Watch a movie that's set in winter. I am not expecting a lot from this. That said, I enjoyed Gunpowder Milkshake. I enjoyed, what was that one with Kate Beckinsale? Jolt. Didn't like the Jessica Chastain one, nor the Protege actually, but I'm willing to give the woman assassin trope a shot again. Sometimes they can be really fun if they don't take themselves too seriously. We'll see how this one plays out. I haven't seen the Allison Janney one, where she's got a past. She's a badass. And it's always, protecting a child, whether it be a daughter or a found daughter or whatever. But I'm down with checking it out. Again, I'm not expecting a lot, but I am thinking I might have a couple of laughs.
I have not seen the Allison Janney one, but I did see Gunpowder Milkshake. That was a lot of fun. Kate was pretty good. All things considered. So this one actually reminds me more of Hannah than anything else. Maybe it's just because of the cold, wintry climate and the gun for hire sort of thing, and who's on the run. The trailer.
Other than being a mother.
Yeah, well, I think Hannah, the guy was the father of the daughters. So
the trainer.
The trainer. Yes.
The educator, the one, the father of the princess, who's the one who gives her the skills to wreak vengeance.
Yes, who must train the child to be a trained killer. This, if anything, Jennifer Lopez is in a renaissance, if you will, in terms of she is working a lot, which is always good to see. This one did not make it on my list, but it's always fun to see actors and actresses able to stretch their legs a little bit and try new things, and that is what Netflix in the streaming world is perfect for. You can do a film and be creative and still have a decent budget on it, but not have to have a $500-400 million epic every single time out. I think this looks like it could be a lot of fun, a lot of action, a lot of suspense, and I think the mother could be the mother of all Netflix May releases.
Oh.
Ah, ah, ah,
Oh. Wait, sorry, my friend. I got one for you. Bear with me.
yes.
Or maybe
You are the fully equipped
this is
audio
why I'm an
engineer.
awesome guest. I bring my own sound effects.
Yeah. You bring all the toys and the tools to the party.
to add what value I can to your wonderful show.
Yes, absolutely.
So, man, I'm excited about getting into your list. There's a couple of flicks where I'm like, I'm going, really? And others, it's like, oh, I want to hear more about that.
Wildlife. This is a documentary, but it's also a love story. It's a story about trying to make an impact by companies out there trying to talk the talk as well as walk the walk. In this case, climb the mountain sort of thing. This is a National Geographic documentary. It is about the creators of North Face and Patagonia. There have been a couple of other documentaries talking about how they are trying to save the earth in an acre at a time down in South America, down in Argentina. Basically, they are buying up as many acres as you can find, miles, kilometers of wildland down in Patagonia as possible to try and then give them back to the Argentina government in an effort to save the environment or save and restore what has been developed already and putting it back in the hands of people. It's also a love story about the two co-creators, co-founders of North Face. So all in all, Wildlife looks like a comedy. It kind of reminds me of the Fire documentary love story that came out last summer, which I did not see, but it made it onto my most anticipated movie list for, I think, June or July or whatever month it was. So Wildlife, kind of in that same vein, just no volcanoes this time. Looks like a lot of fun, and it is number 9 on my list. Heard anything about Wildlife?
This was one of the ones where it was until you shot me the list that I'm like, I want to know more. And that's what I've heard is what you've said. But it is something I'm looking forward to checking out I'm looking forward to checking out the trailer.
And part of this is CNN ran a documentary last year on Patagonia. It was like a 7 or 8 part documentary series, and the couple in this documentary movie were in the documentary series. So I feel like I've already seen parts of this story before, but it's always fun to see the big screen treatment. This is the first of 2 autobiographical comedy movies about a comedian dealing with his father. And this is one from comedian Sebastian Maniscalco. Yes, there are 2, for whatever reason, Hollywood makes meteor movies hitting the earth in 2s, volcano movies in 2s, and for some reason, stand-up comedians dealing with their fathers in movies in 2s. This one is called About My Father.
You know what? That won't be the first time that's happened.
Yeah, this is true, too. This is from comedian Sebastian Maniscalco. Robert De Niro is playing his father in sort of a Meet the Parents reversal where he's taking his father to meet the potential future in-laws, and he's worried about his parents, or his dad, embarrassing him in front of wealthy potential future in-laws.
White bread.
Yes. It's very traditional power structure. Wealthy. He plays a man of Italian descent from an immigrant family, and a very blue collar means in this film. And so you get a sort of Meet the Parents in reverse scenario going on here. But overall, it looks like a lot of fun. It doesn't look like it's going to be trying to change the world or do anything controversial other than just an hour and a half of fun. I'm not huge on Sebastian Maniscalco in terms of knowing a ton about him as a comedian. I've seen him, pop up here and there as a supporting actor. He does fine, but I think this is really the first time where I'm getting a chance to see Sebastian Maniscalco as a lead actor telling his story, playing himself in the movie because they are the Maniscalcos. Interesting all the way across the board. Fingers crossed. Love seeing Robert De Niro go back to the comedy roles. So all of that is why About My Father is number 8 on my May list.
I steered away from this one because it was a little. It felt like a little. It's like, okay, I don't want to. I want a crusty old Italian guy. I just didn't feel like seeing the shtick. I think this one for me, Brian, was a just, you know what? I'll wait until this is on streaming. I'm not gonna spend money on that thing. Actually, who knows? I might not spend money on half these movies. I'm rather cheap, but I got to admit, I didn't see enough where I'm like, oh, this is going to be different to hook me in. But who knows? So, assuming you'll be checking it out in theaters, maybe one of your 1 minute reviews, like immediate reactions, will change my mind.
And maybe
that's what I'll look forward to. Your reaction video.
Assuming I do see this on Memorial Day weekend, there's so much coming out in the month of May. It's not superheroes blowing each other up. It's not a war movie. It's not an Oscar-winning drama. It's just a comedy. And part of it, too, is comedies the last several years have, studio-level comedies have kind of suffered a little bit. And it seems like comedies have been driven to streaming services with minuscule budgets, which obviously comedies and horror films, you don't necessarily need to see a huge budget in a film, but it's always nice to support a what looks like a funny comedy coming out in theaters. So yeah, it may very well be one that is worth waiting until streaming, waiting until VOD, but it does look like a lot of fun, and it's always good to see Robert De Niro play the comedian role in a film. So, like
I said, you know what? I'm looking forward to your 1 minute review. Because, heck, one can have their mind changed. Sometimes you're just in the mood for, I want to go out and I want to see something light and I don't want to be bombarded. I don't want to be overwhelmed with so much eye candy that I'm like, I'm more wound up when I came out of the theater. So, who knows?
And for all of us that love movies like Meet the Parents, can you name a single comedy that's maybe not family friendly, but family familiar at least? Of the last
family oriented,
of the last 10 years, that is one of those studio level comedies that you would really recommend, that really sticks out in your mind. When you're talking about comedies, like Meet the Parents, and there just really hasn't been that many of them in recent years. So. Yeah. I'm, fingers crossed.
The business is changing.
Yeah, it's a changing business model, but hopefully this will be a good one to put out there. Tell me about Master Gardener, coming out May 19th. This is Joel Edgerton.
Okay, yeah. Here's the log line. Here's the log line, Brian. A meticulous horticulturalist, a gardener, who is devoted to tending the grounds of a beautiful estate and pandering to his employer, the wealthy dowager. Joel Edgerton and Sigourney Weaver. From what I could gather from the trailer, it's got a noir vibe. The Rotten Tomatoes score was pretty good. That said, if you dug into the reviews, it wasn't universally applauded. I want to explore the vibe a bit. I'd love to see both these players, but especially Sigourney Weaver, kind of digging into this role. And so I'm like, it's not at the top of my list. It doesn't even cut the top half. But I'm curious. I'm curious about this. This I may check out that weekend, which would be, I think, the Victoria Day long weekend, the Victoria long weekend up here in Canada.
I saw the trailer, the first teaser trailer for Master Gardener a couple weeks ago, and it wasn't even really a trailer. It was a scene that they had released when Master Gardener went to one of the film festivals that was out there.
Toronto or...
Yeah, and they just sort of released,
festival.
as far as I can tell, they released the first trailer proper here a couple days ago. And
Yep.
yeah, I mean, it's Joel Edgerton as the man with the past, now tending garden to a wealthy client in Sigourney Weaver. Also interesting.
I wonder if there'll be a buried body. Oh, wait. I can't believe I'm wasting time when I have a button.
Yeah. Well, and also interesting, one of the standout performers in Black Adam, I'm talking about the one who was the DC version of Storm.
Yes.
But she did a great job playing the African-American woman in charge of Wind, a la the DC version of Storm. She as part of the Justice Society of America. So that's the only other place I've seen her before, but she is the one playing the granddaughter to Sigourney Weaver in the trailer for Master Gardener, and it looks like she's holding her own with Joel Edgerton, the grizzled secret agent, whatever he is, the man with the past in this one. So yeah, this is Master Gardener did not make it onto my list, but it does look like it's pretty well done, and any film that's good enough to get on the film festival circuit is generally not going to stink up the place. So yeah,
Contessa Swindell played Cyclone.
That's it. Quintessa Swindell, as I butcher her name there too. So
yeah,
Quintessa Swindell. Yes.
Anyways, as Maxine Hunkel / Cyclone.
Yes.
Cyclone.
Yeah, not Storm. Don't want to violate the
Cyclone.
Cyclone, not Storm. Not at all the same thing. Not the DC version of Storm.
Not at all.
Cyclone.
Cyclone. Oh, wait. Cyclone.
Exactly.
I'm going to play that chime every time we say Cyclone.
Almost wish I had like a particle effect of.
Oh yeah. The more you know.
Yes.
I'll see what I can do for the next time you have me on. First documentary that I have on my list. And of course, it's still a Michael J. Fox movie on Apple TV Plus. I was like, I mean, kind of the way I think, Brian. I hope this isn't too terrible. I like Master Gardener still. Which way? I could put them side by side. Oh, wait a second. That's on Apple TV Plus. I'll definitely watch that. There is a star, television to film to television to film, from Canada originally, that I kind of grew up with in a way. Maybe not from my teens, like Family Ties, sort of thought, I wonder how he's doing. And every now and then you see him do something in pop culture, and I feel good about it. I'm not much into celebrity worship or being that interested in how celebrities live, but Michael J. Fox, I make an exception in hearing about his life and how he has lived through what is a terrible degenerative disease. I want to see this. I want to see this flick, and it's on Apple TV Plus. And Apple TV Plus recently gave me a great 3-month deal to stick around. So I'm like,
this is also on my list. I love Michael J. Fox. There's just sort of, he's the good-looking actor, but there is sort of the Marty McFly everyman thing about him, the Alex P. Keaton, if you will. Even some of his, I don't want to say lesser movies, but the less well-known movies in his filmography, Secret of My Success and films of that ilk, he's able to play drama really well, but comedy, light comedy, romantic comedies is really his wheelhouse. And as you said, he goes from TV to movies in a way that really Hollywood didn't do up until Kiefer Sutherland did 24, 10, 15 years ago. When you think about a guy who made the decision to go public with his illness, when someone makes that kind of decision, of course they're going to get the sympathy, oh, he's so brave sort of thing. But that could have been career suicide for someone who has to perform for the camera and travel and promote films, everything
Well,
along those lines.
Who's going to hire him?
Yeah, exactly. And he has
big asterisk, to any producer thinking of him,
Yeah, and when you have a wife and when you have kids to support, going public, even as a celebrity who's made money over the years, going public like that is a huge risk to your career. So, in addition to the stress of dealing with health problems of that magnitude, so I am curious to see a lot of this behind the scenes interviews and all of the thought process that went into him going public. It ain't over till it's over. This is a documentary about Yogi Berra, one of the best baseball players of all time. He was the catcher on the Yankees World Series championship teams of the 50s, 60s, and then he became a manager after that. And even if you're not a baseball fan, you probably know Yogi Berra, Yogi-isms out there. It ain't over till it's over, and a bunch of other common sayings that are blanking out of my mind right now. But Yogi Berra was a beloved baseball figure who also was very humble and also with the everyman thing. He was an everyman who was a baseball Hall of Famer. He was a three-time MVP. So here's a guy who was teammates with Joe DiMaggio. And while Joe DiMaggio is off marrying Marilyn Monroe, he's going home to his wife and kids every night and just being a regular guy while having all of these World Series rings that you can see in this picture. He has since passed on, but this is a documentary that features his granddaughter as producer/host. So I've always kind of had an affinity for Yogi Berra. Yes, it kind of comes from Yogi Bear a little bit as a nickname, but Yogi Berra always had that fun quality to him, that easygoing kind of demeanor, that very oversimplistic and yet somehow still somewhat wise thing. So, It Ain't Over documentary coming out May 12th, number 7 on my May list.
I was a fan in the 90s of baseball. In the 90s, when the Toronto Blue Jays had those back-to-back World Series wins, that especially that first big run. I was living in Calgary at the time, Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Yes.
And otherwise, I haven't paid attention since. So I have certainly heard of Yogi Berra.
I am a major sports fan, almost as big as I am a movie fan. Yogi Berra was largely retired by the time I came along in the 80s and 90s as a sports fan, as a movie fan. So I only know him as an elder statesman, and he did live to be 90 years old. If people's children and their families are their legacy as well as everything else they do in life, then he is well represented in that category, at least in terms of filmmakers. You know, if you figure anybody who's got a granddaughter that wants to make a documentary about their grandfather, probably, unless he was just a real SOB, left a pretty good impression. So it's kind of nice to see a filmmaker.
Ty Cobb.
Yeah, like
I have seen some great baseball movies.
Yeah, I don't think Yogi Berra was spikes up when he was slided to second base. So
yeah,
so I'm hoping just to feel good
or hit his spouse, like
these
guys would do.
I hope that's not in this movie about Yogi or this documentary about Yogi Berra, but
it doesn't look like it.
Yeah, I fingers crossed.
The log line does not, the deep secret behind the Yogi Berra story.
Well, if it was, then that would really change the meaning of "It Ain't Over" as the title of the film. So,
oh yeah,
so
a little dark now.
Yeah, exactly. So as far as lighter fare goes, documentaries and a tip of the cap, a tribute to a grandfather, Yogi Berra, "It Ain't Over." Fast X. It is Fast 10. Fast and Furious 10, the movie series that can't settle on a naming convention other than words including Fast and Furious.
For the love of God, why?
Yeah, and now they've marketed this film as the beginning of the end, and yet somehow it's not a part 1 of 2 or 3 or 4. it's the beginning of the end, which means there'll probably only be another 15 or 20 movies in this series. The Fast and Furious.
Beginning of the end of us squeezing the towel dry, the money towel.
Yeah, until the next
Every drop of dough.
Until the next generation of characters comes along 15 years from now, and then all of these actors will come back with more gray hair when their kids take over, or their characters' kids take over.
I was going to say, doesn't Paul Walker's character have a kid?
The character is still technically alive, unless he died off camera at some point. Yeah, he's retired.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they did a back of the head kind of, okay, goodbye, I know you got to check out.
I think it's actually kind of a nice send-off they did for him with the CGI.
His spirit lives on.
The whole thing where they were at the end of the film of Fast 7, they were able to send him off without sending him off, sort of thing. So all of that kind of, the found family thing. It's weird because you don't really think of Vin Diesel as being emotionally sensitive, other than what he says, it's about family. But yet somehow there is that kind of an awe factor when it comes to Fast and Furious movies, because found family is, it's something you choose. It's not something that is bestowed upon you for better or worse. Found family.
Well, apparently you find it.
Yes, you. Oh my gosh! Look at this. The one.
I just wanted a quick note on when you're talking about the emotionality and Dom Toretto there. Vin Diesel was in Boiler Room with Giovanni Ribisi and a number of other, I think...
Ben Affleck, I think.
Plays Spock.
Zachary Quinto?
Zachary Quinto. Anyway, he was in that, and there was a couple of moments where it was like you'd see chops, totally comfortable with him having more range than we see in your typical.
As much as I knock him a little bit for the lack of acting range, he is able to bring a lot of heart and to Groot, only saying "I am Groot" over and over and over again. So he is a better actor that I think a lot of us give credit for, rather than just the guy that drives cars and gets in fights and punches people. He does have a certain amount of emotional range and solidness to him, so when you see him come on screen, you're going to be getting a good performance. So
Spielberg doesn't hire bums.
This is true. Yeah, he was. He did help save Matt Damon that one time.
He was in Private Ryan.
Yeah.
I usually swear on my own show, but I understand we're daylight hours. Kids could be watching.
Yes. But it's
someone think of the children.
It's funnier with the bleep, though. It is somehow funnier with the bleep. The other thing that was sort of I am a little bit worried about, and this is why it's not higher on my list. The one thing I'm a little bit worried about with Fast 10 is it's repeating the convention that has popped up in recent Fast and Furious movies, where the villain from one film is now part of the family in the next film. Somehow John Cena was the long-lost brother in the last film, which I didn't fully see yet. But he's with the family in this one, and the bad guy this time is Jason Momoa, which he's going to show up, mumbling lines to Vin Diesel in Fast 11. It's almost guaranteed. So I am a little bit wary of that convention of, they have a bad guy, but they're never actually going to kill off the bad guy, because God forbid they ever kill off the bad guy. Or someone's actually
part of our found family.
Yes.
The family is just bigger. Yeah.
It's part of a family.
There are a few of them that I have really enjoyed. They are what they are, but I want to say not 4, but I think it was 5 through 7. They had a nice run. Cool cars. Has some emotional heft in those movies. I think I checked out
once Paul Walker passed. I think Vin Diesel kind of had to take a little bit more editorial control, if you will, or just sort of, the machismo thing.
The star.
Yeah, as opposed to being the duo star. I also
And
liked.
I think casting uh, another big guy against him was a bad idea in
Dwayne
what's his
Johnson.
name? Fuck, Dwayne Johnson, the movie star, the fucking charming AF movie star that I suddenly draw a blank on. I actually think that was a bad idea. Never mind what I've read and then as desperately as I can click away from about drama and who's in charge and everything. He needs the Dom Toretto character needs a different kind of foil. And I think Paul Walker's performance.
If you think
Yeah.
too, there you can go against type or with type, and Jason Momoa, Dwayne the Rock Johnson, they're sort of same type. They're sort of with type with Vin Diesel and Paul Walker as the pretty boy, the blonde hair, blue eyed, matinee idol kind of looks to him. Not quite as hard, not quite as prison muscle kind of thing that Vin Diesel has going on. It was a nice compliment to each other, and I don't think they've ever quite replaced that since Paul Walker passed away.
Yeah, and that I think is to the series, to the franchise's detriment. But in the end, I checked out then. Was I even really that into it? No.
You mentioned
apparently Gal Gadot is her character is alive again.
Yeah, they've kind of moved around with character deaths as well. I will say the other thing that kind of interests me about this one,
a superhero movie?
is it's getting there.
This is Star Wars.
We're also revisiting Fast
How the
5.
hell is Darth Maul alive? Look, he's literally cut in half.
I hope not. Yeah. Well, he's got the robotic bottom now, the crab legs. I do also like that they're revisiting Fast and Furious 5. That was the one that took place down in Brazil. That was probably the best one. That was the one where Paul Walker and Vin Diesel were somehow hauling a giant asphalt through the streets of Rio de Janeiro. They're revisiting that. Yeah. Jason Momoa is basically the son of the bad guy from that film. So that's how they're bringing Jason Momoa in. Also they're bringing in Brie Larson, which I like Brie Larson. I'm not a huge Brie Larson fan, but I do like Brie Larson. She's an Oscar-winning actress. And speaking of Oscar-winning, they are also bringing in Rita Moreno from West Side Story, Oscar winner, as the abuela, as the grandmother to Dom Toretto. So,
sure.
So they're adding those three big actors to the Fast and Furious franchise as we get all the F sounds out there. But all that is why it is my number 6 movie for the month of May. Blood and Gold. This is a film about Nazis.
Well, and a deserter. It is set in the closing days of World War II, where a deserter, desperate to return home to his daughter, finds himself caught in a battle against SS troops on a mission to uncover hidden gold. Ooh. I mean, it's so genre. I'm like, oh, on the search for Nazi gold? How could I not? I can't help myself. I do like these kind of heist movies. I also kind of like the idea of exploring the collapse, the loser's perspective.
Spoken in German. It is German language.
Yeah, it's a German film. And so just to see how they manage that just looks like genre fun. She's got like a Panzerfaust, shooting at somebody. And I'm like, I'm in. I think I'm really, notwithstanding all the stuff I kind of prettied it up with, perspective from the loser and all that other nonsense. I just think it's a genre film, and something Jim and I talk about on our channel regularly is seeing actors where we don't know, so we don't know their tics, we don't know their standard tricks, can immerse you in a way, and you can kind of skip some of the other stuff, the constant movie critic in your head. by just seeing it in a different language with people you don't know. If they had only thrown in a couple of zombies, I'd be like, I'd be like, perfect.
Nazis and zombies.
Well, what was that Overlord? I think it was something Overlord, where some American soldiers find Nazi experimentation and scientists and super soldier zombies. Genre nonsense.
It does.
And it was one of the first movies Jim and I covered when we started our little show, Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies.
I looked at the IMDb page and I did not recognize a single actor's name off the top of my head. So I'm just going off watching the trailer a couple of times, and it looks like a lot of fun. It looks like it's channeling a little bit of Guy Ritchie, a little bit of Martin McDonagh in terms of like In Bruges and some of these other heist films. A little hint of Tarantino, not exactly, but a little bit of that influence in there as well. It looks like a lot of fun. It is all spoken in German, so my guess is either we're going to have closed captioning on the entire time, or we're going to have to take a crash course in German, or just guessing what they're saying.
I'm sure it is a Netflix. It's a Netflix flick. Their dubbing machine will be on top of it. I'm a subtitles over dub guy. That said, yeah, Netflix dubbing is good. They one of the things they regularly do is have the dub over they'll get stems. So they'll get the mix and then they mix the dub into the mix instead of just, I've seen some terrible dubs. I've reviewed some terrible dubs where it's the whole soundtrack gets dropped when the dubbed actor's speaking. And it's like, oh, it's terrible. But Netflix doesn't do that. I think they do a great job of dubbing their stuff to broaden, really to maximize their investment. And so, yeah, looking forward to this. And I think people will be able to enjoy it, whether they're subtitles folks or they prefer a dubbed version.
And, I go back and forth on dubs versus subtitles. I think the last couple of years I've been more in favor of subtitles because you can hear the expression and the emotion in the human voice better with the original, as opposed to trying to gamble with the quality of the voiceover to where it could sound like Grindhouse or some sort of bad 70s action film, kung fu movie kind of, especially if you're watching on Netflix and you can rewind and go, oh, what are they actually talking about? You can actually watch it the first time, reading through it, and then look up and see their facial expressions, rewind it. So that is one of the better things.
It does, though, track the rise and fall of a real company. Research in Motion, which was the inventor of the BlackBerry. I would argue the real first smartphone was a huge thing in Canada. The company, the founders, they were the Canadian Google, you could say, the Canadian Apple, this thing that just sort of took off and took over. And there was a time before the iPhone where the coolest phone to have was a BlackBerry Pearl. I remember my first BlackBerry when I was working at the city of Winnipeg as a functionary, and I still look fondly at that piece of kit. It was rock solid, did exactly what it should do and no more. But the world changed, and BlackBerry, it rose with the changing world and fell just as quickly. Jay Baruchel telling this Canadian story with Canadian talent. I'm looking forward to this. Maybe that's my double feature weekend. Check out Still and BlackBerry.
I was, of course, familiar with BlackBerries. I never had one myself. I had no idea it was a Canadian product. And actually, the first time I saw the trailer for BlackBerry, I was laughing at the final line of the trailer, and I was thinking of you, actually, when it says, Like, how are you going to get this working? It's like, well, we have the best engineers in the world. And then he comes back the next scene. He's like, I thought you said that we had the best engineers in the world. Why didn't it work? He's like, well, we have the best engineers in Canada. So, sort of that's self-referential sort of sense of humor in the trailer for this film. This not make it onto my list, but I do find it interesting that we're getting a lot of biopics about consumer good products lately. We just had Air out in theaters about the birth of the Michael Jordan Air Jordan basketball shoe brand. We just got Tetris out as well. So for whatever reason, we're getting the biopic treatment on consumer goods, on products, on brands. And this one is, it's probably smart that BlackBerry hits theaters before the eventual iPhone movie. And yes, I know we've had at least 2 different Steve Jobs movies, but we haven't had a movie yet on iPhone, shot on iPhone, about the birth of the iPhone as of yet. So I do think it's a good thing that BlackBerry came at first in real life, so it's probably a good thing that the BlackBerry movie came
I'd only
out.
push back on that. The one thing great about the movie is that Research in Motion, for all intents and purposes, doesn't exist anymore. Any iPhone movie that comes out will be shit until Apple is no longer a thing.
Yeah.
Don't see that happening anytime soon.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, and
it's good. What corporation is going to go, sure, fill your boots? We're an open book. It's going to be a 2-hour commercial for a fucking phone that doesn't need any more advertising.
I guess that it would probably be something along the lines of Social Network. It would probably be an Oscar favorite darling sort of thing that's sort of coming out in spite of Apple's objections. Probably done by, I don't know, Steve Jobs' kids or Steve Wozniak's kids or grandkids, sort of like Yogi Berra's grandkids doing this documentary on him. So, who knows if we know it'll eventually be coming, though. Hopefully it'll be good. I guess it was...
It depends on how well this does.
Yeah.
If it stinks the place up, everyone will go, oh, well, that script.
This is Michael J. Fox. It is a documentary. It is interviews with him over the years, behind the scenes shots of Back to the Future. And it is him talking about dealing with Parkinson's and when to go public. And this is the kind of discussion that I don't really think that we get very often with public figures that are this famous, that are looking back at a decision that we all know that he made, but we're getting a lot of insight and into why that decision was made and how that decision was made, especially as a father with a wife and young children. This is not an easy decision to make, especially with having to still work and support a family. It would be cynical to say, oh, well, we all knew that he would get all this sympathy and his sitcom wouldn't have been canceled and he would still work. You don't really know that, especially with a disease as progressive as Parkinson's can be. Thankfully, he has had good medication, all the best that money and fame can buy. But this is still something that'll be interesting to watch as far as behind the scenes, seeing the human side of Michael J. Fox sort of bearing all, in terms of emotionally bearing all, to tell his story. So, still a Michael J. Fox movie. Interesting title, but I love Michael J. Fox, and that is my number 5 movie. It's also on your list.
It is. Not as high as it is on yours, or is it at the same level, actually? Oh, I'm
at number 5.
Yeah, I wanted to see Nazi Gold.
You wanted to see Nazi Gold more than a fellow Canadian?
More than how would John Campea say it? A good Canadian boy.
Yeah,
it's like, yeah. Apparently, I want to see people fighting over Nazi Gold.
Yes. So this is it's a feel good
Simpsons movie.
Yeah, Uh,
Let's take a Simpsons episode and turn it into a serious genre flick.
so
Anyway, sorry.
honestly, it sounds more like a South Park kind of flick. But this is also one that's coming out May 12th, so lots of good stuff to watch in May. What's love got to do with it? This is not a remake
What
of the.
does love have to do with it?
Yeah, this is not a remake of the 90s film. This is a British movie about Pakistani British culture and British culture. This stars Lily James, who was Pamela Anderson, and she was Cinderella. So this is an actress with a really big range. It also has Emma Thompson as Lily James's mom, but this is also Shazad Latif, if I'm pronouncing his name right. Hopefully, Shazad Latif as the romantic lead interest character. He is literally the guy next door who has grown up and is somehow still single, despite being a doctor and good looking, and right next to her the entire time, Lily James the entire time. So she is a documentary filmmaker who follows Shazad Latif's, or his character's name, Kazim, through the arranged marriage process, and to see whether he goes through it or not, and to see whether he realizes that she was there, in front of him, the entire time. So this is, it looks like a fun British rom-com. You get all the cool accents. You get a different culture from North American kind of culture. So it is kind of all of that, a little bit of Bollywood musical mixed in for good measure. It looks, and I love Lily James. I think she always does something that's interesting at the very least. So Lily James, Emma Thompson, Shazad Latif. This looks like a lot of fun. It doesn't look like it's too heavy. It looks like an easy watch, and it has a lot of cool British accents and British and Pakistani culture kind of mixing all of that together.
One of the reasons it didn't make my list, even though I'm with you, big fan of Emma Thompson, of Lily James. It looks funny. It's called all the stuff a rom-com should. That said, it's got some of the tired tropes of rom-coms under my eyes. It was the next door neighbor. And while it looks like it may not actually go there, I'm like, well, I'm not going to a theater for that. I'll wait until streaming, especially for something that I think may actually be a lazy setup, not necessarily lazy writing. You get into the dangerous world of like, is this going to be a bunch of an excuse to laugh at brown people? Oh, look, it's the brown person making a joke about themselves. Like Jemima Goldsmith, known as Jemima Khan, who actually she was married to Imran Khan. She is a Pakistani and English citizen, but here's the thing: she is bougie AF. She comes from her father is Sir James Goldsmith and mother Lady Annabelle. Like, it's just, multiple, like, there's fucking, pardon my poor language, there's like 3 hyphens in this woman's last name. Vane Tempest Stewart. It's like, yeah, this is and even, Imran Khan is, big, was a or is a politician, was the prime minister of Pakistan. There's going to be some corruption and just outright extrajudicial killings of dissidents in that resume. This is not somebody who's like, oh, I'm like regular people. I don't know. There's my politics coming out.
Well,
but that said, I am a fan of Lily James. And so I'm like, I'm gonna see it. That's going to happen, but not in the theater. So for all those reasons, Brian, I'm not seeing this movie in the theater, but I'm still going to see it.
Your thoughts on Shekhar Kapoor, the director of the film?
I saw The Four Feathers. Elizabeth, the Golden Age, saw some of that. But he also did Elizabeth. So it's not.
So
like
did a lot of people.
Skills, you know, like, I mean, that was a great film. Elizabeth, the Golden Age, less so. The Four Feathers, not the comedy of cross-cultural or cultural conflict comedy, probably be handled with some sensitivity and maybe some realism, you know, but still.
It looks like that this is not going to be old school, old world parents coming down hard on their adult children. I think that trope, of all things, has been played out many, many times before. This looks like it's more like, well, if the traditional dating scene hasn't worked for you, what about an arranged marriage? It worked in our family. We love you. We want you, we want you to find a good person. So the fact that their families are being supportive in or at least it looks like the families are being supportive.
I'm going to quote The Big Bang Theory. Fuck's sakes. Sorry, my friend.
You're bringing up Raj in season 12?
I am referring to Raj, who went through, says, you know what, this isn't working. Can you do a deal for me? And I even know Indo-Canadians from India and from Pakistan, and the way they've discussed it is, oh, that's a love match. That was arranged. Actually, I remember when I was in Istanbul on a boat sitting by this Bahraini who was asking me for love advice because, you can tell how desperate he was. But he was like, I'd rather do a love match. But after seeing his game on the boat, I was like, yeah, maybe go to your folks and see what they can work out for you. So I think the way we look at it as, the folks making you do something you don't want to do, is in the part of the world that this is part of the scene, the culture, it's more of an option. And so if it's handled that way, and if that's part of the education that can happen in a film, sometimes accidentally, it could be really interesting. Still didn't make my list, but I'm certainly not going, what?
They're busy professionals. They don't have a ton of time for dating, and they may not just have that social skill set as well. So this is sort of an interesting look at, in a modern sense, when people aren't being forced, when people are choosing to take this route, is this an option for people that are either workaholics that have great careers, but not a lot of time to socialize, or B, don't have a lot of the social skills that you need to be a successful dater in order to get that marriage and have a family.
Yeah. You know what? I'm not sure I would go that far. I think it's because that's a culturally bound practice. It's also it's a materialist practice. It'd be an interesting discussion to have before doing over analysis of this film.
Yes.
We'll save that for them.
Yeah.
It'll be the next time we have you on, as we do a deep dive on what's love got to do with it.
Absolutely.
It is an interesting riff on the title. For number 3, I've got The Machine, and it's not so much for
Bert Kreischer.
Bert. Thank you. I want to see Mark Hamill. He looks fantastic. Him seeing those comic chops that he so obviously has. I need to see that. My love of film, in many respects, started as a 10-year-old watching Star Wars. Mark Hamill is not going to be with us forever. and he is still healthy and still doing great work. And this is one of the few films where I'm like, I want this to be good. The Machine. That's why I want to see it. That's why I want to see it. That's why I'm excited about seeing it.
Hopefully, we have Mark Hamill for another couple decades. I would assume. I would hope. He seems like he's in pretty good health. He looks like he's healthy in this film, at least. I think I've seen Bert Kreischer before somewhere, like, you flipping past Comedy Central, but I've never sat down and watched anything of his. This is a film that is also on my list. If a trailer's supposed to make you want to go for it and kind of grab you by the balls and make you want to watch a film, this is that trailer. When Mark Hamill comes in halfway through, balls to the wall, like, he's not swearing in the video, but it's pretty darn close. There's no Luke Skywalker in here. There's not even any Joker. It's just they don't look like father and son at all. But such that when you rewatch it and you go, oh, and then when you actually look into him, Bert Kreischer, the person, because it is Bert Kreischer, that is his name. He is. I may be mispronouncing that, but it is.
The guy's 50.
Yeah, and he's. But he was the inspiration for the movie Van Wilder. And you look at him and he's walking around on stage and he's balding, he's got the great beard, he's walking around shirtless on stage at his age.
Charm though.
And with his heft, and you're like, is this Van Wilder? And sure enough, if you look at old pictures of Bert Kreischer from the 90s and early 2000s, he looks a lot like Ryan. He does look a lot like Ryan Reynolds did in Van Wilder.
This movie is also based on a loose retelling, a very loose retelling of his time studying abroad.
And that was
I buy that he's kind of Van Wilder.
Yeah, and that's that was the other thing that kind of got me about this was the whole the Russia angle, the Russian mob. It's kind of like an easy grab as far as like a comedic reference, but the way they approach it. And then going back and rewatching some of his stand-up where he's talking about the machine and the story behind the machine, it does kind of stoke the creative, like, okay, well, this is interesting. This part of this, not saying it's a biopic, but part of this actually happened to him in some way, shape, or form. He's not just pulling it out
allegedly.
of his butt. Some version of this. At least he's built a stand-up career off of it. So
this is why that's the kind of.
It is interesting to note
I got
too.
drunk with some Russians on a train.
Yeah,
not exactly a hard thing to do.
And also mirroring Van Wilder, he did spend 7 years in college. For a guy that I'd never heard of before watching this trailer, I would not put this on the top of my list unless there is a good reason for it. And this trailer, called The Machine, grabs your attention by the balls. This was
Paradise, written and directed by Charlie Day, also starring a patient in a mental health facility, gets kicked out like so many do. Here, we could treat you. Can't afford that. You're not a danger to yourself or others. There's a bus ticket, and they just get dumped on the street. A number of interesting circumstances becomes famous. And then apparently, according to the log line, loses it all. The log line sounds, it almost has nothing to do with the trailer. The trailer, though, and what I can tell from the storyline from other sources, it reminds me of a Peter Sellers flick called Being There, about Chance the Gardener. Mental challenges, intellectually challenged. Chance the Gardener, the guy whose estate he's been living on passes away, and he gets kicked off the property in a nice suit, and all of a sudden he becomes famous as Chauncey Gardner in Washington, and this looks like a kind of a retelling, just putting it in Hollywood. I'm excited to see this. I think it could be really good. I think it's the only comedy other than my number one where I'm like, yeah, I will go see that in the theaters. The Machine. Actually, the top 3 of my list are comedies of one short. Apparently, I'm going to be watching a lot of comedies in the theaters anyway, and this is one of them.
Yeah,
really looking forward to this.
When I looked up this movie, when I saw it on your list, I was like, oh, okay, Charlie Day, and then I watched the trailer, and it's interesting. The Charlie Day, this is his directorial debut. Yeah. And when you look at the first time watching the trailer, it's like, oh, okay, so it's a little bit of Dave. It's a little bit of Dave where you have him playing the movie star who doesn't want to go do his job, so we'll find a lookalike for him. And so he's playing both roles. And it's also a little bit of, the mental health thing, the state of the mental health thing. But that's set up for him being found and discovered.
Also a bit of Bowfinger.
Yes, as well.
Yep.
And so I love the aspect, too, of there's a little bit of, this is Charlie Day, but it looks like we're getting a little bit of Charlie Chaplin being channeled in. A little bit of that with
the Tramp.
Yeah, but a little bit of the Tramp, where he's not speaking very much. It's all his facial expressions and his body language, and how he falls ass backwards into good and bad situations. And so we're getting a little bit of that Hollywood mystery.
Forrest Gump.
Yeah, a little bit of the Forrest Gump, but we're also getting the inside look at Hollywood, a sort of cynical and yet fun look at how how fleeting
which we
fame
all
can
can't,
be. Yeah.
Which all can't get enough of.
Yeah. And
also Steve Martin, the jerk.
Yeah. So it kind of
fools rise and fall.
Yeah. So all of that kind of working together, and then you see the cast in this film, and you see probably, you can picture Charlie Day calling up all of his actor friends and saying, hey, I'm doing this little independent film. We have a little bit of a budget, but we have creative control to come up with the weirdest
Hollywood
Hollywood
shooting
characters.
In L.A., so really, I just need you for a day, honestly.
Yeah.
You could drive to the set, because we're not sending a driver.
And you be as quirky as possible. So we're getting a lot of big-name actors playing really quirky roles.
We'll see. Listen, we'll see.
Yeah. This is true, too. They could just be cookie cutter carbon copies, but it does look like a lot of fun. The energy in the trailer's fun. It's upbeat. So I like Charlie Day. I'm not a huge It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia watcher, but Charlie Day in movies is a reliable source of comedy. He's great in the Horrible Bosses movies. So watching his directorial debut is after seeing it on your list, it now makes it onto my list as well. So big Charlie Day fan. So I love this idea of Fool's Paradise. Great title too.
The double meaning, Fool's Paradise, LA, stardom, celebrity, all that stuff. Like it great comedy can be such a great way to explore themes, right? So
absolutely. Before the year, I would have said it would have been one of my number one movies because I'm a huge MCU fan. But Guardians of the Galaxy
3, I get that. I'm it's number 2 that I'm like I'll wait to editorialize on.
Yeah. So number 3 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. This is a movie that I was really looking forward to at the start of the year. This is a movie that I really wish would have come out 3 years ago, when I think everyone probably would have wanted to see it more 3 years ago. Anyway, all of the stuff that happened in real life, it probably will be a documentary at some point in and of itself that leads James Gunn being fired from Guardians 3 and somehow eventually taking over the DCEU, which is a weird story, almost probably more interesting than what Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 will be. Yes, but I do think that does fundamentally change the background of this film, where this Guardians 3 looks a lot different visually than what the first 2 Guardians of the Galaxy movies are, and what they've established in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We're getting some of his actors that he brought in on The Suicide Squad over into this film. The visual aesthetic looks different than the previous Guardians of the Galaxy films, which makes me curious, but not particularly optimistic. Yes, this is all getting the band back together one last time. yes, a lot of these actors probably will not be together in this format, together in these roles, in this same iteration. Next time, if there is a next time, yes, James Gunn will probably not be directing a Marvel movie anytime soon as he's taking over the rival entertainment universe. All that being said, it is still a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. I do love the cast. I love this cast of characters. I did not know anything about the Guardians of the Galaxy before the first film came out, so all of my impressions of these characters comes from the MCU, comes from these solo films and the Avengers movies. So I love Chris Pratt. I love this whole cast. So it is my number 3 movie on my list. It's lower than it probably should be, but for all the reasons I stated, it is still at number 3 on my list. Thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy?
Can I save that?
Yeah,
Can I
absolutely.
save my thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy? I do want to hear why your number 2 is number 2. I get your number 1. You've hinted at it already, and I totally get that. It's the number 2 one I was that kind of what?
Yeah,
and not in a good way.
When you see my number 2, which is The Little Mermaid, coming out Memorial Day weekend, The Little Mermaid, which is a live-action remake by Disney. This is a remake of their 1989 animated film from the Disney Renaissance. I have not seen the original Little Mermaid, so all of those characters and all of those songs, yes, of course, I'm familiar with them. You hear them all the time in everyday culture, but I have not. This is not a film like Aladdin or Beauty and the Beast that is, that is part of my Disney rewatch list. I just never got around to it. Didn't dislike it. It just never got around to it. But there's this trailer. You have Halle Bailey as Ariel. You have Melissa McCarthy as Ursula. You have Javier Bardem as King Triton, Ariel's father. Yep. It looks like it's recreating all of the shots from the original film. It looks like we're getting, yes, a more diverse cast, which can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing. It looks like it's well done in this case, though. Halle Bailey has a great voice, and her singing in the trailers for this film. The effects look good, and somehow it looks, in this live-action Disney Renaissance remake category, this film, for some reason, looks like it matches the visuals of the original animation the best. Beauty and the Beast was close. Aladdin, not so much. The weird CGI live-action of Lion King, good film, but it's kind of a weird thing. The visuals in this, though, for some reason, even though it's live-action, it does look like it matches the style of the original Little Mermaid. And again, even though I've never seen the original the Little Mermaid before, the first time I'm seeing Little Mermaid will probably be this live-action version. So, all of those reasons comes in at number 2 on
number 2.
Number 2 on number 2 on my list, on the May list. Which is
number 2.
Yeah, it's a shock to me because I love Disney films, I love Disney movies, but this is not one that I was. I heard about it last year, and you're putting together your movies of the year. This is not one that was high on my list to watch. So the fact that it's number 2 on my list does still surprise. It does surprise me.
Okay, what kills me here?
Okay,
what blows my mind. Sorry.
No facts.
What blows my mind is these live remakes that they've been doing. None of them have hit it out of the park. Not one of them where you've gone, wow, they've really brought something extra to it. They have done what you just described. This one looks like is basically, we'll just reshoot the thing we did before. It's like I feel like it's a studio doing what record labels were doing. We'll remaster it for CD, and then we'll get to squeeze some more money out of this thing that we made. Of all the things you described, and who knows, maybe they do bring something extra where everyone goes, wow. Where I'm going, wow, I was wrong. they took this iconic Disney Renaissance animated film and added value, brought their own take to it, paid respect to the past while, making something that resonates now. That's a tall order. I would bet against it. I am betting against it. And of all the things you said, the only thing I think is, cast diversity. Well, that's a good thing. That's not bad, but I don't think that's a reason you just make a movie. It's like, we can, or say that. It's like, listen, we're going to do all the stuff we did before because they were super white. And we're going to reshoot these things, reflecting the modern world. That'd be like, okay, I get that. Still kind of hope it's a good movie. None of these previous ones have anyone's gone, wow, and I expect the same. And so it's nothing I would look forward to unless I had children. Then I'd be like, bring it on.
Hour and a half. Yeah.
Daddy needs to shut these shut the little up.
I do have to push back.
Then I'd be like, bring it, Disney. Bring all of them.
I do have to push back a little bit, though, because you mentioned like repackaging the existing product, like an old song into CD form or MP3 form, as opposed to just another record or tape.
And that's not a perfect analogy, but you got what I was going for there.
And while Disney does all of those on a regular basis with their existing products, at least this time they had to cast new people. They had to shoot, they had to render new effects. So
yeah, you're absolutely right. The analogy is imperfect because they do actually have to remake the other movie. I mean, they screw the writers, and a writer's strike on the horizon. What a shock!
Yeah, but they do though also have to make the decision: how much of the original do we copy paste? And how do we create something new to where people are going to be willing to spend money?
And I would argue that they have never once done with any of the other remakes. They didn't. They literally, like, right down to the fucking script. It's like, we're going to have to adjust this because now we're actually dealing with a real human being.
Yeah.
Who's both got to sing and act, which, it has some production challenges with it, but otherwise they've done nothing different.
And
this is almost like you know what? Little Mermaid, that Avatar thing, that's making some money. We could do the ocean.
This is another one underwater. Yeah, we've got IP that reflects that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You know what? That said, it's not exactly just remastering bring out the old tapes and modernize them. They've already done that by saying, here's your DVD extended super deluxe Blu-ray.
And I've been told that
paid no one for.
Yeah, I've been also told that they have new musical numbers that have been worked on for this remake as well. So new music, musical, all of that. Yeah, all of it. Hopefully it's good. We don't know for sure until we see it. So hopefully it is good. Number one movie for the month of May.
Kristjansson's number one movie
is
Guardians of the Galaxy, baby.
Bum, bum, bum.
Guardians of the Galaxy. I am jazzed about it, and it may actually be the only movie, Brian, the only movie where Jim and I do an over-analysis of it. Our schedule is already booked for our weekly live show, and I think this is the only one that the only new release that made it on May's schedule for us. Now, of course, I am a little nervous. Quantumania, in my opinion, was a bit of a bust.
Financially speaking, absolutely.
You can see my my review of it. I felt it was a bust as a moviegoer. That said, I trust James Gunn. And I'm thinking of that Christmas special, which I'll be damned moved me. It's like, oh my goodness, this is doing it again. Damn you, James Gunn, you bitch. Oh. You son of a...
You son of a race car driver.
With a toy. Yeah. Make a big spectacle while still keeping it grounded and emotional. I think is what I'm looking forward to. That we are going to get a resolution to this arc that will be satisfying. One of the things that has been perhaps missing with a lot of the Phase 5 films and other content that has come out of the MCU. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Plus, I enjoyed it. I still get misty when I think of James Rooker's, he may have been your father, but I was your pappy, as he's sacrificing his life to save Star-Lord. I'm like, I get choked up now. I'm
Mary Poppins, y'all.
I am jazzed about this movie. I'm looking forward to it. And maybe some of my excitement and why it's number one is it's only a couple of weeks away. Jim and I will be there. We'll be doing either a parking lot or Tim Hortons review. Now that Tim Hortons has been legally stopped from evicting their tenants so that they can ship in exploited workers.
Oh, geez.
We're going back to Tim Hortons again. We'll see. Who knows? They could do something else evil, and then I'll be like, all right, back to the parking lot. I'm also curious. I'm also excited to see how they manage Gamora from a different timeline. Who knows? This could be a total bust. In 3 weeks, in 2 weeks, you might see a video from me going, well, third time was not the charm.
I find it very curious as well. The last 10 years, the MCU has been the most unstoppable force in Hollywood at the box office. And they've made close to $30 billion over the 33, 34, however many films it is now in the MCU. And it's interesting if you look at the April, May, June release part of the schedule. Everybody gets out of the way of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 when it comes out comes out Cinco de Mayo, which is obviously a huge weekend.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see what the struggles that the financial struggles and creative struggles that the MCU has had the last couple of years. It'll be interesting to see whether or not Guardians 3 is the final film that the rest of Hollywood just sort of seeds the next 2 weeks out of, coming up in 2024 and onward.
That's a great point.
I really wonder if the years of other studios going, you know what, we're just going to give you the next 2 weeks, and we're not gonna let our best summer movie go straight up against a Marvel movie and get kicked at box office. We know they're going to make $1 billion on every single film. We don't really know that anymore. I actually did like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, but I think they spent way too much money, and it was a box office dud in a lot of respects. I mean, opening weekend it made a lot of money, but it didn't have the legs as it was
a mediocre film. Like, it's a mediocre film, missed some of the key factors that make for a good Ant-Man movie. Not that the superhero movies have a lot of legs, box office wise to begin with. They're pretty front loaded, as the hipster box office analysts say. The reason that wasn't this big hit, that it was not as good. Mediocre's maybe a little harsh. It was okay. It was fine. There's a deep
your favorite word.
There's a deep Rob and DMG cut.
That would make a great T-shirt, by the way. You should set up a merch store and have "It's Fine" on the T-shirt.
It's fine. Me doing this, it's fine. It is a meme. I'm recording this. Maybe there's a scream grab there. It's fine. Blackberry, will it even come to Winnipeg? I don't know. I think it's a kind of a semi-limited release. Will Guardians of the Galaxy get that space anyway? Because they'll just be The movies are getting there's less movies, but they're getting bigger. And all the small stuff going to Netflix.
Plastering it everywhere to get that opening weekend box office, and then assuming that there's going to be a 65 or 70% drop off week 2 based all off that opening weekend. We're getting a lot of, because we're now in a digital era where all of the individual theaters now don't have to get prints of movies. I do think that is creating, at least locally here in Las Vegas, we're getting a lot more independent films that are getting roadshow type treatment, where they're getting a Tuesday night, a Wednesday night. So it's not getting wide release, 5 showings a day, but we are getting more variety because the theaters now are able to download and show and advertise easier roadshow pictures without having to have physical prints of movies and take up the theater space for the entire week.
Be interested to see the math on that,
Yeah.
But that's a great point. You know what? It's not only a great point, it's noteworthy.
Bringing the props too. I love it.
Yeah. Oh, it's not even, this ain't a prop, baby. Note the click. I'm clicking it. And I'm writing it down.
And the actual book with paper and everything.
We can see my setup. I am not afraid of the technology of the gizmos. That said, there is still a place in my life, and I would argue in anyone's life, for pen and paper in a nice leather book wrapper thingy. It's refillable. Anyway, what the hell
lets you have many leather-bound books.
Distro.
The machine. There's just something about
worthy.
Yeah, and this is
screen grab.
Yeah, this is the least likely film to end up on number 1 on my list. Before I started doing all the
worthy number 1 though.
Yeah, before I started looking up all the films for this month, it's like download all of them. I was like, what the heck is this? The Machine. I was thinking with a title like The Machine that it was probably going to be some sort of art house flick, Oscar hopefuls for some reason coming out in summertime. Ha ha ha. And then I watched it, and I watched it again, and I watched it a third time. And I'm still kind of dumbfounded as to what to expect from this movie, which is, I guess, part of what is titillating me a little bit, that draws it to number 1 on my list. Yes, Mark Hamill going full Mark Hamill. I didn't even know there was a full Mark Hamill gear to go to, but he's going full Mark Hamill in a way that I've never seen Mark Hamill go before. And I didn't think that in a movie with 2 different films about stand-up comedians playing themselves with their fathers, I didn't think that this would end up at number 1 on my list. But The Machine is...
And then, yet, here it is.
Yeah, well, part of it is I am a huge Van Wilder fan. I'm a huge fan of that kind of comedy. And it's funny, I don't think of Van Wilder every day, but it is on my list of 2000s comedies, and I do like that style of comedy. I love Ryan Reynolds. I love the whole bit. But I never stopped to think that Van Wilder was actually based on a real guy. So the fact that we're getting a look at what Van Wilder would look like if he were fat and 50. Which kind of sort of makes...
back on his corrupt past.
Yeah, kind of.
His debauched past.
Yeah, and in the same way that The Fabelmans kind of looks back and looks forward simultaneously at Steven Spielberg's parents from different perspectives. Because, like, if E.T. is Steven Spielberg in his 30s looking at his parents in his 30s, and The Fabelmans is him looking back at his parents in his 70s, this is sort of the opposite of that. It's looking back at himself, looking forward. Bert Kreischer with Van Wilder being the substitute, and him now in his late, the clip in the trailers from his 40s.
You might be given this bit of nonsense. Too much credit there.
But it's
making it analogous to
an Oscar-winning
one of the greatest films made by one of the greatest filmmakers.
But it is interesting looking at a character 2 decades later and the real life version of, and this is a guy who, if you look at his pictures from when he was in his 20s, was looks a lot like Ryan Reynolds. There's a reason why they cast Ryan Reynolds in a Bert Kreischer type role.
Neither are documentaries.
No.
This is where we learn inspired by. It's
yes.
Like, okay, well, we've got this kind of a couple of interesting anecdotes. Now we got to make up a movie. Thanks for the inspiration. Now we will make up a movie.
But that's part of it, though.
Wilder. We have an inspiration. Now we will make up a movie.
To me, it's an interesting question from a screenwriting perspective and also from a film fan perspective. What happens to the college party guy when he turns 50? Is he still doing keggers and keg stands? And is he walking around shirtless when he's put on a few pounds?
Isn't that the final of the Cornetto trilogy? Edgar Wright. Like, I mean, it's been done.
Yeah.
You know, the party guy and having to deal with that past.
So all of that, along with Ryan Reynolds and Van Wilder, all of it put together, is why it ends up at number 1 on my list. Reflect a little bit on this list for me. Are you happy with your list? Are you excited for the month of May?
I'm just excited to be able to go outside regularly. I've been able to do it now for a couple of weeks, although it's still pretty brisk and invigorating up here in Canada. I'm looking forward to those first real, like, Manitoba spring days. I'm looking forward to, not rushing into the theater, having to disrobe a parka and all the other accoutrement of winter living, and then having to put it all back on. I'm looking forward to just rolling up into the theater, sitting down and enjoying, having what I think is very much a summer experience, going to the movies. There's some great flicks on my list, or hopefully great flicks. Put an asterisk. But there's some great summer movies on my list, on your list. There's some where it's like, I am a bit more, I guess I'm kind of an adult. I am a little disappointed in myself even. I call myself out here, that on my list, there is no, except for number 8, and even that one, I'm like, well, it's on Netflix. It's cheap. There's no woman-led movie on this. One of the reasons Jim and I do that social nutrition checklist is it's as much a check on us. It's like, how diverse is my film watching? And although there's a number of flicks here where there are strong women characters, I a little more diversity in what I'm excited about, would have been nice for me. But otherwise, at the same time, I'm not changing. I'm not taking anything out, and I'm not adding anything in. Maybe what's love got to do with it? Maybe that'll get added in.
Are you still happy with the order in which you placed your list?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's not, like I said, Fool's Paradise and The Machine could be, and Ask Me Tomorrow, I might flip them around, but it's only because you wanted it ranked. If it was tiered, they'd be on the exact same tier. You got a solid list, man. And in some ways more varied than mine. 2 documentaries.
2 documentaries?
Actually, 3. You have 3. A third of your list are documentaries.
And What's Love Got to Do with It, I would argue, is also a female-led film from a male director, but still it is a British film. I've got... I've got two biopics from stand-up comedians dealing with their dads. Yeah, so I've got a pretty good variety on my list. I do think Fool's Paradise, though. I was not aware of that film when I looked through everything and put it together in my list. So that one definitely would have made it into my top 10 or 11 for sure upon further review. But that's why I love doing this video.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is actually the first repeat live stream that I did, because I did my first one last month with Sean Jackson from Lost and Real. So thank you for coming on and being my
thanks
my
for
follow-up.
having me on, man.
And at least, but coming second gives you all of the luxury of all of the better worked out graphics.
Benefit. Well, I was
and live
on
stream
one of
with no one in it.
Early live streams.
Yes.
You know what? But being a big live streamer, that's most of my content. Also, an opportunity to plug our next week. We will be, because it's hockey season, hockey playoff season.
Yes.
Winnipeg, Vegas. So Jim and I will be overanalyzing a 2013 film called Goon.
With Stifler.
Yes.
Sean William Scott.
Sean William Scott, Jay Baruchel, who both wrote it and is in it, one of the supporting cast members. Shot here in Winnipeg when I was in the Film and Special Events office for the city of Winnipeg, so I was quite familiar. My colleague Kevin, who dealt with them for the couple of months they were in Winnipeg. So I've got a little bit of that behind the scenes view of this flick. I'm really looking forward to it. That'll be Sunday night.
Now, I know Jay
10
Baruchel.
PM Central Daylight Time.
Jay Baruchel, I know, is Canadian, I believe. Is he?
Yeah. He's a Montreal kid.
Is Sean William Scott Canadian?
No. They hired him as their star. This kind of list making it reminds you of films that it's like, oh, I vaguely heard about that. Or even just researching my list, it was like, oh, I want to see that. And so I think it's a great exercise.
It is actually that. It is an exercise because it forces you to look at the entire release schedule and kind of plan ahead your month and say, okay, well, what is coming out, rather than just, well, what's the commercial that's airing during the Super Bowl? You actually looking and saying, well, okay, I can't watch everything every week. There's not enough time.
Yeah.
But what movies can I put on my calendar to look forward to, just to make sure that I'm properly excited for which movies I'm going to
and
go
again,
to see.
Seeing it in that list, it kind of shows it's like, oh, this is, well, at least right now in this moment, what I'm actually interested in. But I don't see myself going, now let's get into the deep themes and filmmaking craft and storytelling craft of The Machine. That's going to be entertainment. And even Blood and Gold, it's like, oh, there's a genre film. And I'm not saying genre film is not worthy of study. Heck, the French made the French New Wave is because they thought American genre film was worthy of intellectual review. But yeah, The Mother, it's Jim and I can't see Jim and I doing an hour on that.
Subscribe to Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies, and which movie did you say was coming up this Sunday?
Rob Kristjansson.
At Rob Kristjansson.
Yeah, at Rob Kristjansson. Find me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and of course here on the YouTubes. With your permission, I'll put a link in a comment after the show, Brian, if it's cool with you.
Absolutely.
To our this video I'm talking about on genre.
Absolutely,
which was
and
from our last show.
I'll do you one better. I'll put it in the description section.
Oh, thanks, man.
YouTube as well, as all the social links for you as well.
I do appreciate that. Thank you very much, sir.
Yes,
you're very kind.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for coming on. Thank you for spending 2 hours of your time with me. 2 hours plus of your time.
Thank you very much. Well, we're both chatty fellows.
Yes, we are.
Opinionated chatty fellows.
Yes, well, that makes the discussion fun. So thank you for coming on. Thank you for everyone watching on replay, because no one's here watching right now. But thank you, everybody watching on replay, and thank you for joining me for my May movie release. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.